Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
two certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only two best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go.
Do you ever feel like Dear Krachel is our redheaded stepchild? Actually, do you want to know what I think it really is? I think it's our love child.
I mean, the name is literally the merging of our two names.
We secretly really love doing it. And I don't know, here's the thing. I don't know if other people love it as much as we love doing it.
I don't know. I don't know.
I mean,
why do you say that? Just because there's not as much of a reaction?
Well, I think that people tend to respond to like certain types of episodes really regularly. Like they're all about the side chats usually. Or interview episodes, you know. And it's not like you guys aren't listening to this. I know you're listening to this. It's just, my theory is that some people don't realize how much goodness is here because they see the title and they're like, that doesn't apply to me. And they don't realize
there's other questions.
We're answering other questions.
Yeah, there's like hidden gems that are not as obvious in Dear Krachel.
When I say redheaded stepchild, I'm saying that in like a positive way. Like, it's the stepchild I really want people to pay attention to and root for. I feel like I want you to like see also, all of its hidden potential.
Isn't that a terrible phrase? Like, what's wrong with being redheaded?
Well, I don't understand that either because I think having red hair is great.
I think it's beautiful.
I always thought it would be cool to have red hair. And I have like, dirty dishwater blonde, as my grandma was fond of saying. So,
how flattering.
I know. Well, she was a hairstylist, so she would know. That was the technical term for my hair color, apparently. So nice. So anyway, well, we like doing this is the point. And
I also, I think you might be saying it too, because we're like, you guys should be asking, we should be inundated with questions all the time. We should have so many questions that we could never know how to respond. And we get questions every time.
But not as many as I want.
You guys don't even realize like the free wisdom that you can get.
I know. It's not that they don't realize. It's just in the moment, you don't think about it.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's fine. I actually feel like I'm making things up to complain about when I don't really have that much to complain about.
No.
Like, it's not like no one loves Dear Krachel. Plenty of people are loving it. I know that. I'm just wanting like 4 more people to love it.
Just 4?
Just a handful is what I'm trying to say. I want more people to realize the depths through which we go in these episodes. Actually, that's not true. And the last episode got a lot of good feedback. I'm just making things up. I want to complain. I'm realizing that I'm in type 4 on the Enneagram. We're going to talk about that later on in the summer, the Enneagram.
Where you like to be dramatic about things?
Well, I tend toward melodrama.
Sure. Yeah.
And melancholy. And you put those two things together and you're like, an old Victorian lady fainting on your chaise longue and
with her smelling salts.
Yeah. And
fanning herself.
Oh, the world is out to get me. Oh. So anyway.
That might have been you in a past life for sure.
Oh, I'm sure. Positive. You were probably the maid fretting over me or something like that. Taking me way too seriously. Oh no, madam, how can I help you?
I can see it all too well.
I know. Are you seeing yourself in one of those little like maid caps?
And a little apron.
Yeah. Okay. Well, sorry, but that went off the rails within the first 3 minutes. So, okay, we actually do have some, I kept complaining, but I actually do have some great questions to answer.
We do.
This month. So let me just get into the first one without further ado, okay? Dear Krachel, how do I meet my own inner expectations without constantly rebelling and self-sabotaging? For example, I'm working with a nutritionist and trainer, and so I have a calorie limit, a very reasonable one at this point, but yet still exceed it and feel restricted. And now that I have a workout routine, I won't do it. Or if I meal prep even just one meal a few days, I don't want to eat it. If I buy cold cuts to make life easier to make sandwiches, I won't eat them. It's comical at this point how this happens to me. And this is from Sarah.
Oh, Sarah, I relate to this to some extent. I am definitely someone who's like, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to do it so well. And then like, no, I feel restricted. And then I want to go and I want to indulge to rebel against it.
Definitely do this. I'm worse about this than you, I think.
Well, this is the over dramatizing again coming out.
It's like, don't tell me what I can and can't do. And if even I can't tell myself what I can and can't do. I do this all the time. I'll have an idea and I'll be like, no, I shouldn't do that. And then I'll go do it because I don't like being told I can't do it. And vice versa. You know, right. I should do it. No, I'm not doing that.
Well, so, and isn't there a quiz out there about this?
So Gretchen Rubin has a quiz about, I forget what it's called, but if you just Google Gretchen Rubin quiz, I think it'll come up. But it's about the different ways people struggle to hold themselves accountable. And I don't know a ton about it, but I know that one of the results is rebel, and I know that's what I got. And so I'm positive that's also Sarah's accountability type. So the reason I think you bring this up is because I don't want Sarah to think that this is just her. This is actually a type of normal reaction to trying to hold yourself accountable.
Right. And we're telling you we have touches of this too, just to let you know you're not broken, you're not crazy. No. This is a thing that people struggle with. Yeah. And I think what is really the word that stuck out to me the most from your question was the word restriction. And for someone who has a more rebellious type personality when it comes to accountability and goal setting, if you feel restricted, that is the perfect trigger for your rebel to come out. Mm-hmm. So approaching this from the point of restriction, I have to have only a certain number of calories, or I can't eat certain foods ever, or I have to eat it in this particular way or at this particular time. Those kinds of restrictions are going to make you feel instantly boxed in, and you're going to want to punch your way out of the box and go do something completely different just to not feel trapped. Yeah. So that approach, that might work for some people. It's not going to work for you, Sarah. That's okay.
There's another word that's standing out to me, which is reasonable. She said, it's very reasonable, my calorie limit, but yet I experience such restriction and resistance to it. She didn't say resistance, but that's what's happening. So reasonable is a logical word.
Right. That's you talking yourself into wanting
mind
to do it.
Yeah. Your mind is saying, but logically it's reasonable. Your emotional state, your emotions are saying, hell no, I don't want to do that. So what you're experiencing is a tug of war between your mind and your feelings, or your mind and your body maybe, or even your mind and your intuition. But clearly your mind is on the side where it thinks, well, you should be able to do this because it logically makes sense. So the first thing I want you to throw out is the idea that because something logically makes sense, you should be expected to do it with no issues.
I also want her to throw out all the shoulds in general here.
Yes.
Because the shoulds
those are all coming from the mind.
That's what you're rebelling against.
Yes.
Is all the things that you think you should be doing. I should make my life easier by getting cold cuts. I should eat under this number of calories. I should eat these types of food and not these types of food. Those are rules and, again, restrictions that you're putting on yourself that you want to rebel against and you want to indulge. And so my take is, why don't we focus less on all of the things you can't do or can't eat and focus instead on the opportunities for what you can and do want to do? Because right now it feels like, oh man, I got prescribed this approach and I feel obligated to do it, but it's not really what I would want to do. Ultimately, what you're doing is what you want to do. That's what you're choosing instead of the restriction. So let's find some healthier options that you actually want to do where you don't feel trapped.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to do a real deep cut here and recommend, if Sarah has not listened to our very first side chat about how to work like a woman. So you wouldn't have listened to this because it probably doesn't sound like relevant.
It applies to this.
But it totally is. I'll link to it. It's literally, if you go back to April 2018, that's where this one is. But this one is about the difference between masculine and feminine energy. Sarah is trying to do exercise and eating in a very masculine way, which can work for some people. That structure, the literal metrics that you're counting calories.
Yes, very goal driven. I got to do this and not do that.
But she's rebelling against it. And I think naturally Sarah is a rebel, but that's fine. We can work with the fact that you're a rebel, but you have to, it has to be okay for you to be a rebel because there's no other way. Like that's just how you're wired. And B, it doesn't mean you're going to rebel against everything constantly. It means, though, that if you're doing something that's misaligned with the way that you're more naturally wired to do it, your rebel is going to come out loud and strong in order to try to get you back on track. So I think that there might be a way for you to do calorie counting or exercise or eating well in a way that feels more feminine, which is not about gender. It's not about like, when you think feminine, it's not about gross pink feather boas and like
bubble baths
and like champagne overflowing, you know, in your bubble bath while you're wearing your feather boa. It's not about that. It's literally about your internal preference for how you like to take action, or it's really about your energy. It's really about how your energy is wired, and it'll make a lot more sense if you go listen to that. But the way I take this, because I also I struggle with exercise. It's just one of my biggest problems. And I just hate feeling restricted. I just hate having to work out. Like, I like having worked out, but working out is like such a drag. I never want to do it. And I will bribe myself to not do it. I'll convince myself. I can talk myself out of anything. So
the rebel is strong in that one.
What I'm realizing, is that I can't, there are certain ways I can't do it because it's too easy for me to rebel against. And I think having the rules and the metrics makes it too hard for me. So one of the ways that I have to do it is I'm not working out so that I can lose 15 pounds. That's not why I'm doing it, or else I will rebel against that. It's not enough of an intrinsic motivator. It's because I just generally want to feel good. I'm taking out the rules and the metrics and the goals a lot of the time, because if the goal is to feel better and to move my body, it's easier to do that in a way that can meet that goal without it having to be so strict and regimented getting there.
Well, right. So what you're saying is you recognize that when it comes to logic, what you should do, and emotion, what actually you want to do, you have realized you can't try to make logic win. Yeah. Because emotion will override it. So you have to start with emotion. You have to start with the goal of, I want to feel a certain way.
Right.
Or I want to enjoy this as much as I can. And that you can stick to that because you're not trying to ignore your emotions in favor of logic.
It's kind of like if I go to the pool and swim, which I like to do sometimes, a trainer would be like, well, do this many laps and do breaststroke and then do this and alternate, like very like it would. He or she would give me very regimented. And I'm just like, if I stay in this pool for 30 minutes, that counts. And who cares how I get to the end of that 30 minutes?
Yep.
So I'll do breaststroke until I feel like doing freestyle. And then I'll go back to, you know what? I'm not counting really. I'm just swimming because screw it. I'm probably getting exercise. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that's a more feminine way of doing it, as in it has less rules, it has less rigidity, it's more free flowing. And I'm not counting anything. I'm not measuring anything. I'm not saying you can't count or measure at all. I'm just saying if counting and measuring triggers your rebel, that might be part of the problem.
And give yourself options. So you were just saying it's not, I have to do this and then I have to do this and then I have to do this.
I can do whatever I want while I'm in here.
So why are you going to rebel against having a bunch of choices? You can just make all the choices healthier choices and still allow yourself to choose within that realm.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't have to feel nearly as restrictive.
Yeah. So we got to...
But just recognize this is how you're wired. So this might be a little bit of a challenge. And that's okay.
The fewer things you feel like you have to do or should do or obligated to do, the easier it's going to be for you not to rebel. You have to have more freedom to choose and more room to play with, less boundaries and restrictions, I think. So let us know how that sits with you. That probably is not a cure-all, but it's a place for you to start. And if you have not listened to that very first side chat, I almost called it a chide sat. Wow. From April 2018 called How to Work Like a Woman. Please go listen to that.
We'll link to it as well.
Yes. Okay.
Question 2. Dear Krachel, how do you deal with toxic family members, especially when you don't want to completely cut them out of your life, but you know that being around them drains you? What I'm having problems with is that I see there are energy vampires in my family, but when it's good with them, it's really good. And when it isn't, it's really draining. Then, when I do put up the boundaries, I feel guilt and shame, not only internally, but also from the passive-aggressive comments that they say. Thanks, ladies. Love what you do. And that is from Terece.
Okay. So
Can I just validate, like, everyone listening to this is probably nodding, like, oh, I know who you're talking about.
Of course, everyone has in their immediate or extended family some sort of energy vampire. We had an episode about energy vampires. I'm sure that's probably what Terece is referring to a few weeks ago, which if you haven't listened to, it was a bonus book club. We did a whole conversation about the book Dodging Energy Vampires. So go back and listen to that if Terece's situation rings true for you. I'll link to that too. I'm going to have a whole list of things apparently that are coming up as we...
I just don't want her to think her family is uniquely draining or messed up because this is kind of the nature of a lot of families.
Yeah, pretty much. There's one or two in every crowd at least. So because of that, this is something that might trigger some of you. And what I want is for you to like hear it and breathe through the discomfort of it and consider the reality. Okay? I think that what we have to get down to is questioning what is the purpose of a relationship. I'm going to focus particularly on family relationships because those are the ones you can't choose. Like you were born into a family, you didn't really have an option.
Everyone else in your life, you picked.
You picked and you can unpick a lot easier. You know, I mean, it's not easy to get a divorce, but you can. It's really hard to divorce your own mom, for example, if your mom is that energy vampire. So it's particularly challenging because it's hard to get away from it and you can't unchoose them in the same way that you can choose everyone else. So what is the point of a family? What is the point of a relationship from a spiritual, almost like soul level, what are we here to get out of this type of thing?
I'm going to tell you what it's not.
It's
the point of a relationship is not to be, and this has been a real lesson for me, so I'm speaking from experience here. It's not to have a pleasant, positive, uplifting, happy, balanced relationship all the time, 24/7.
Yeah. So the point of a relationship is not for it to be good all the time. Or, this is where some of you are going to get triggered, even ever. Some of the relationships in your life may not ever be good. And I know that that is disappointing and you are allowed to be hurt by that. You are allowed to grieve that. You are allowed to grieve what you wish you could have. And the point of a relationship is evolution, growth. Family is probably the most important place where we get triggered in that way because it enables us to grow because these people are pissing us off because they trigger our deepest wounds, likely because they helped create those deepest wounds. So their family is like a container where you're practicing the things you maybe most need to practice and grow and learn. And in order for you to grow, things cannot always be good. They cannot always be happy. They cannot always be easy.
I'm sure you all have heard the expression that you learn a lot more from your failures than from your successes.
Yeah.
And that applies here as well. So you learn more out of your
challenges,
conflicts, and negative interactions than you learn when everything is fine and great and happy and pleasant. So the main reason why we are in relationship with anyone is because it's a bit of, especially family, is a spiritual playground. It's where you get to go and have...
More like boot camp.
Yeah, playground sounds a little too fun sometimes. It's not always fun.
A little bit more like boot camp.
Yeah. And that is where you have the greatest potential for growth. Here's the thing. You can only focus on your own growth in those relationships.
Right.
Some of you are going to really want the other person to use their own opportunities for growth just as much as you're using them, and you have no control.
And you're going to be disappointed because most of those people are not going to step up and take responsibility for themselves the way that you're willing to. And again, that's not your problem. That's their problem. That's their job. And if they don't pick up on that, that's on them. And that's okay. So I think what happens is that we get so attached to the idea that this relationship should be good. It should be happy. We should be close. That then we end up on that roller coaster that Terece just described, when it's good, I'm flying high. And then when it's bad, I'm crashing down. And the reason you're flying high and crashing is because you're attached to the outcome, is because you believe it should be good. And so when it's good, you're happy because it matches what you think it should look like. And when it's not, you're unhappy because it doesn't match what you think it should look like. The way you break free of that is that you stop believing that it has to be good all the time, and that your definition of a relationship is not based on how good it is all the time, especially not with family. I want to really keep putting an asterisk on that, because this is not true of people you choose to be around. If it's unhealthy, like half of the time, that's a problem, especially if you can leave. It's a little bit harder when it's your parents or your sibling and you can't really leave them.
Along that vein, I do want to mention what she's talking about with boundaries, because even though we're saying it's okay, it's normal, in fact, it's good for your own growth that it's not happy and pleasant all the time, that also doesn't mean it's okay that family members take advantage of you energetically or emotionally.
No.
It doesn't mean stick around when you're offended or you're hurt or you're really drained.
Well, that's the
you
point
do
of-
have to set those boundaries. And
that's what the growth is. The growth
Right.
is that they are challenging you to do those things that you particularly find difficult, as someone like you, who I believe is probably a people pleaser.
yes, right. To speak up, to say, I'm not sticking around for this, to say, I can't be a part of this, to set those boundaries. I think there's probably so much growth that goes on, but that's one of the biggest arenas. It's one of the biggest challenges for growth that you can take on. And the one part that you mentioned that stood out to me as well was, well, I set these boundaries. So you're doing the work already. You're doing it.
She's finding it difficult, as she should, because
And-
this is a spiritual boot camp for her.
Then comes the guilt and the
Right.
shame, especially when you get a negative reaction.
Because they're being snitty and passive aggressive,
Right.
as people who are used to taking advantage of you will get if you set a boundary.
Correct. So that's, to me, just a sign that you're doing it right.
You passed your boot camp.
Yeah,
Yay!
Those reactions mean, oh, you actually set a boundary and you stuck to it. And
Yeah.
people are having a little bit of a hissy fit.
If an energy vampire is happy with you, you are not doing enough.
Yes.
Right? If an energy vampire is unhappy with you, you just passed boot camp. You're doing a good job, Terece. Yeah.
And their reaction is not even about you. It's not about you. So there's no need to feel guilty for something that's not about you in the first place. Mm-hmm. That's completely their own stuff.
So I want you to, again, if we're thinking about the point of a relationship being growth, and it can be challenging, it's triggering you to step up and speak up for yourself, and it works on the parts of you that most need work. That's what these relationships are for. If we think about it like, let's imagine that the people who you struggle with the most, the energy vampire in your life, let's imagine that they're not as spiritually evolved as you. And by spiritually, I just mean like soulfully, they're a younger age. So I see Terece as someone who's more mature on an evolutionary scale, and the people she's interacting with are less so. They're not clearly, because if they were, they'd be more willing to engage with her in a healthy way, right?
Right.
But they're not willing to do that. So they're like children in comparison to Terece, who's more of an adult in an emotional and spiritual capacity. So when you're an adult, do you get offended that a 2-year-old is throwing a tantrum? Like if it's your child especially, or like a niece or a nephew or something, are you like, oh my God, I feel so bad that they don't.
I feel guilty that I didn't give them that extra cookie.
I should have given them that ice cream before dinner. I feel like such a bad person. Now they're being so passive aggressive. No, they're just being aggressive because they're a toddler. No, you don't feel bad. Why? Because you know that what you did was in the best interest of everyone.
And you know that what they were asking for was unreasonable in the first place.
And not healthy in the first place. So permission, and this is something I think people who struggle with people pleasing have a really hard time seeing. They have a hard time seeing themselves as the more evolved party in the mix. They're giving everyone the benefit of the doubt, which I know is a thing that people do who are wired like that. And they assume they must want to be better. And if I want to be better, they must want the same thing, right? And it's so hard to imagine that, no, you are on a higher level in that way. You are more mature, which means like you get to be more of the adult in the relationship, which means you don't have to feel guilty for setting boundaries because you are the one who is tasked with making the hard calls, putting the healthy boundaries in place, like any good, responsible adult, right?
Yes. And that's making me want to remind everyone, Terece included, But anyone who is feeling maybe a little bit uncomfortable with this conversation because they don't like
or recognizes
boundaries
themselves and doesn't know how to get over it.
Exactly that. I want to remind everyone, we're going to have a whole course about people pleasing later on this year. And
not really later on this year,
later summer.
Like later in the summer, like late next month, probably.
So we have a VIP list that you can join if you're like, I think I'm going to need some help with this, a little bit of accountability, because I hear you guys and I want to do that, but oh my God, that sounds really hard.
Yeah. So we're going to have a whole course about this that's based very, very much on taking action and being held accountable. We're going to take you through our version of boot camp.
People-pleasing boot camp.
But it'll be a little bit, it won't be as hard as doing it on your own. It'll be hard, but we're going to help you. We're going to hold your hand while you do it, which I know is what some of you need. So Terece, I hope that helps. And I hope that all of you can zoom out and realize that relationships are not always meant to be easy and that might be okay. And that is not an excuse to let people treat you badly. It's actually the opposite. Relationships are an opportunity for you to step up and take responsibility for yourself and do the hard things, draw the hard boundaries, be the more mature person and grow. And
especially family.
In order to grow, you need to be triggered. That's kind of how it works.
Yep.
So, okay. Last question, and this one is a big one, but very important that we talk about. So, Dear Krachel, I've loved listening to your podcasts, and I thought I would try turning to you for some advice. I have a long history with depression and anxiety and was recently diagnosed with BPD. I've been on medications for 10 years, tried transcranial magnetic stimulation, but the treatment's effects don't last long. I took a much longer time than my peers to complete my studies, tried out different majors, have been a confused child and adult for as long as I can remember. Where I live, people judge you quite openly if you're not a graduate from a prestigious school with a great paying job. Every interviewer I've met comments on my resume's lack of stability. I have felt like a failure and an outsider for the most part of my adult life, and I'm still struggling to find anything that can make me want to wake up every day. My parents are both retired, and I'm feeling pressure to provide for the family, too. I managed to somehow wrangle a job at a company that's pretty well known, but I hate it. I guess my question essentially is, how does someone who, along with a million insecurities and self-worth issues, is struggling with depression and BPD, find a comfortable, enjoyable job? It's already hard for people in general, and I don't know if it's possible for me to achieve it anymore. I can't seem to find a treatment that works. I literally can't afford to take time off, and treatments are so expensive. I'm totally lost. Do you have any advice? Dheesha.
Dheesha, my heart goes out to you because I can just hear in your question that you are a deep feeling and deeply sensitive person. And I think that's probably one of your greatest gifts, but it also is really, really hard to be an extremely sensitive human being in the world. The world is a hard place sometimes. And you can feel very out of place and misunderstood. Yeah. And the pace can be overwhelmingly fast. Mm-hmm. And the obligations can be crippling when you feel it all so acutely.
You've heard me say many times that I just feel like the way I'm wired is not super compatible with the way the world is wired.
I have heard you say that.
And that lack of compatibility can be very painful. It can be really difficult and it sucks. And I wish I had a magic wand and I could wave it over you and everyone else who is struggling with depression and anxiety and mental health issues and make it so that the world was an easier, kinder place to people who struggle. Because really, I mean, those issues are real and they are exacerbated. And it's like pouring gasoline on a fire that you also have to fit into this structure that just doesn't work for people like that. We need more ease. We need more flow. We need more stability, but we also need flexibility.
Yep.
And we need more empathy. And it's just really annoying that the world doesn't accommodate in that way. It accommodates a very different type of person.
And I think what ends up happening is people who are deeply sensitive, people who struggle with emotional...
Of which you are one. I have no doubt you're a highly sensitive person.
We have a whole podcast episode called We Are Not the Crazy Ones.
How to tell if you're a highly sensitive person.
And if you haven't listened to that one, please go listen to it because I think you're going to...
That one's also from early on, like April 2018.
Yeah, we'll link to that as well. I think you're going to really see yourself in that one and hopefully feel a little bit less alone This
Yeah.
is not just you. This is a phenomenon. There's a whole subgroup of people who are these highly sensitives, and it is harder to navigate the world in this way. But what happens is when the world is built for a different kind of person, you feel broken. You feel like something is wrong with me that I can't fit into this.
Well, let's be clear.
mold.
People treat you like that too.
It's true.
Because
you get a lot of feedback.
You don't align with the way it's wired. They think that means there's something wrong with you when really they're just aligning better with the way the world works and they don't understand why you're struggling.
Exactly. Which makes sense why you said the self-worth issues and the lack of confidence and all of that. It just makes sense.
And people questioning why your resume is, all over the place.
Right. But I want to assure you that first of all, that there is nothing wrong with being how you are. You're not broken. There's nothing messed up about you.
No.
You're just wired differently. And the world is built for other people. Not all of the world, but most of it. So there's going to part of what you're going to have to do is recognize and accept and maybe even be extra compassionate with the fact that you are a more sensitive person.
Yeah.
And structure your life in a way that doesn't force you to keep being someone that you're not.
I think first and foremost, the reason we have to start here is because if you don't accept that you are the way you are, then you will always struggle and strive to be something that you're not.
And beat yourself up when you can't be that.
And that pressure and that expectation is probably a huge part of what causes the pain. And so if you can say, you know what, this is how I am. And there are also gifts to being like this. And it might not feel like that today, but there are good things about being the way that you are. I know that you're a very sensitive person, and there's a lot of good things about being a sensitive person. But until you can embrace that and not find it problematic in general, then it's going to be hard for you to allow other possibilities because I think right now you're trying to fit into a mold that mold is just not working. So, okay. I know you asked about like finding a job, but I want to zoom out and I want to talk about this from a little bit of a broader perspective instead of focusing just on the job thing. Because really, I think the question is this: how does someone who is a very, very sensitive human being operate in a world that's not made for them and stay healthy?
Yes.
How do we do that? And then how do we build from that? And I want you to first think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, something I'm sure we all learned about in high school.
And if you haven't,
Google it. You'll see a
press
picture
pause.
of it.
Yeah, Google it. You'll see immediately a triangle and you can read through all the different levels and see what that's about.
Maslow, M-A-S-L-O-W. But on the bottom of that pyramid are survival needs. So water, food, shelter, your basic human needs. Your physical needs have to come before your self-actualization, which is at the top. So you build up toward being fulfilled in a deeper emotional, spiritual sense. But first, you have to start with caring for your physical self. And I think this is very relevant to anyone who is highly sensitive and needs their life to change, but doesn't know how to do it or where to start.
Yes, I have had at least one, I think maybe a few clients who have a lot of the same challenges that you have and a lot of the same struggles. And a lot of our coaching was not necessarily how to find a job. A lot of our coaching was how do I make sure that I can regulate my emotional self? And then the rest of the outcomes came naturally. So the way that has worked for some of my clients that I hope will work for you as well is to be really pristinely taking care of your physical self.
First
and
and
I know
foremost.
this feels like so basic. It seems so simple that it's easy to brush it off and say, oh, well, I can miss a few hours of sleep, or I can skip working out, or I can eat this big chocolate cake right before going to bed. And I'm not saying never eat chocolate cake, but I am saying that you know yourself and you know what your body needs in order to feel more emotionally solid. And so you've got to take care of the basics. That I've had entire coaching sessions with clients who have some of these same challenges where we just focused on what do you need to do this week to get your physical body in such a way that you have the energy and the mental capacity to then be able to go and seek out and do things that are going to help progress you to the next level. It really is that hierarchy. You have to start at the basics. And when you're highly sensitive, that's even more important.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's annoying to be told this, and I have not struggled to the degree that I believe you have struggled. I don't want to compare experiences. Everyone's is very different and unique. But what I'll say is that when I'm experiencing a lot of anxiety or bouts of depression, which I certainly have, nothing is more important than me focusing on feeling good. And nothing outside of me is capable of making me feel good unless I am working on the basics, the very, very basics of what it requires to feel good. Like, you have to feel good first, and then it's a lot easier to enjoy your job or to find a new job or to make outside changes. But if you're waiting for a job to come in and it to be the thing that makes you feel better, that's really dicey. It's dangerous because it's not, nothing outside of you can fill that void at all.
Well, it's like conditionally loving someone. I only love you when this happens. And then when this doesn't happen, I revoke that love. That's the same thing as I'm only happy when I'm in this particular kind of job. And then if that ever gets taken away, I plummet.
Right.
That's a really shaky ground to put yourself on. You've got to be able to be in a place where you can say, I can feel good. I have things that bring me joy. I have things that bring me calm and peace of mind. And when I do those things, I am more open to the right kinds of opportunities. Yes. I can see them. I can connect with them. But if you have not taken care of the feeling good part first, then the reason that you take on the next job will be coming from a place of fear or anxiety or obligation. And even if it were a great job, you're going to go into it with this heavy approach versus this light and open and more positive approach. It's going to be a totally different experience.
I have seen this pattern so many times with my clients that first, I know what you want as a job. I know that's the thing you want. But we have to get you to a point where you're not almost drowning every day.
Yes.
Like, I had a client recently who her whole life has turned around in a matter of 2 months. But the reason is not because she got a new job. Her job is exactly the same, and she's not even intending on leaving it anytime soon, even though originally that's what she thought she wanted.
I've had that happen too.
The reason her life has turned around is because she was incredibly overwhelmed and overworked. And so I held her accountable for... And we worked through the issues why she was holding on to all of the over obligations that she'd committed to, all the things she'd said yes to when she shouldn't have been saying yes. So she was cutting out meetings and slashing obligations. She was renegotiating how much time her and her ex-husband were spending parenting their kids. She was taking on way too much of the burden with her children, of course, like a lot of women do. And that space, that extra space that she created, she could go to exercise, she could walk, she started to meditate. In a matter of 2 months, all of a sudden now she's having these brilliant ideas about what she wants to do next in her career. You have to start with the fundamentals. So fundamentals can mean getting enough sleep. That's it. I mean, if you start there, like getting more sleep.
Even if everything else is going well in your life, if you have a lack of sleep, it taints everything.
Yeah,
I mean, that has to be number one.
As you know, because I complain about this all the time.
Yeah.
I have a hard time sleeping. And so if I've had 9 hours of sleep, I'm like the most...
You're a different person.
I'm literally the best person there ever was. Not, well, the best version of myself there ever was. Clearly not the best person there ever was. You know, staying hydrated, moving your body, meditating, if that's something you're willing to do 5 to 10 minutes a day, even walking outside. I mean, we are literally talking about getting back to basics. So notice that here's what I didn't say. You have to shell out money you don't have on expensive treatments. I didn't say that. Now, if you're able to do something that you know makes you feel good treatment wise, like, so for some people that might be acupuncture or chiropractic, or, you know, I hope you're going to therapy regularly, but that again can be a really expensive thing if you're paying for it out of pocket. I'm not even saying that. That is absolutely helpful.
And I want to just throw out there that we are not medical professionals, so we're not going to tell you the best treatment for this. That has to be a personal decision.
But just notice what we're not saying, which is I'm not saying anything like go shell out a bunch of money. I'm saying where in your life, this is really the question it gets down to, where in your life could you be treating yourself better in a physical sense that will only create more peace and calm and space for you to then build off of that foundation? Where can we shore up the foundation of your hierarchy of needs?
The feeling that I want you to be reaching for is relief. Right now, there feels like there's a lot of heaviness. There's a lot of responsibility and obligation.
Pressure,
there's a lot of fear.
expectation.
There's a lot of negative emotions. So anything that brings you even a little bit of relief, like, oh, I can take that off my plate.
Yeah.
Or, oh, I can stop worrying about that. Just small things. That is proof that you're letting go of some of that heaviness and getting to a place of feeling better and better and better, where you're going to be more open to the right opportunities when they show up.
Yes.
And in the right headspace for them as well.
Yes. So I know that's not the sexy answer. I don't think she wanted a sexy answer.
I don't think so.
But it's not the easy answer. It's not a quick answer. It's not like here's some ideas for jobs you could do that work with, depression and anxiety and BPD. That's not the answer we're giving you, because that is actually disempowering. If we were to do that, we would disempower you, because what we'd be saying is your sense of well-being relies on something outside of you.
It would also be you're limited to these kinds of things.
Right.
When
you might not be.
You might not be at all.
If you're taking good care of yourself, if the base of your foundation is really strong, you might be able to do a lot more than you think that you're capable of doing. And you might not know that until you shore up that foundation.
One more thing that I want to throw out here is that it's going to be incredibly important, even more important for you in particular, but really for everyone, to ask for help. Don't try to do this all alone. It feels like you have a lot of these obligations and you feel responsible for a lot of things. And you're already doing that. You're asking Krachel for help. So that's step one. But there is nothing to be ashamed about. There is nothing to feel secretive about. This is something that the people in your life who love you will want to support you in. And it's just a matter of asking, saying, I can't, this is too much for me this week. I need a little bit of help.
Well, and I suspect part of her problem might be that maybe she feels like a burden. And she also feels like she mentioned in her thing that her parents, there's some sort of expectation or could be there around now they're retiring. And, I'm guessing it's coming from a place of people have been taking care of me my whole life because I feel like I can't function. And so asking for help is hard because that's all I've ever done is likely what she's thinking. I'm just guessing.
Oh, I'm sure.
And it doesn't have to be help from the same sources.
No.
It can be people that you're not accustomed to leaning on. We're not even talking about like help, like come rescue me. We're talking about like little things that might make your life easier just in the workday. Hey, could you help me with this?
Right.
I mean,
nobody is supposed to go it alone.
No.
No one.
No. So I hope that gives you some food for thought. This was a hard question, a really good one, but hard in that it's not one I want to trivialize. It's not one I want to try to like reduce and make it overly simple, because it's not simple and it's not easy.
A fix in 10 minutes.
And there is no fix in 10 minutes. And there is no one size fits all solution here. And so part of the reason I like doing this, though, is that I think we try to boil down our answers to things that are universal, things that I believe can apply not just to Dheesha, but to anyone who resonates with that, and hope that it plants some seeds for anybody who feels like, yeah, I'm raising my hand. I'm not one of the people who easily fits in. I'm not one of the people who this world was made for. Yeah. And as two people who feel very much the same, and, as someone like me who's struggled with emotionally ups and downs and feeling like so physically sensitive, I totally agree that when my foundation is in good shape, I can do a lot more than I can ever do if my foundation is crumbling.
Yeah.
I can't do anything until my foundation is taken care of.
That has to be your priority.
So I hope that helps. With any of you, if you want to send us, anyone who's written to us, if you want to send us an update, you can always email us at contact@clarityonfire.com. If you want to leave a comment on this episode, there will be a link in the episode description where you can come share your thoughts on this episode. Oh my God, my dog just busted into the room because she got bored and she was like, hello, I want to join this podcast.
And the door wasn't closed all the way.
She can come sit next to me. Sit down. No, don't drink out of my cup. Okay. And if you want to ever send us a question for Dear Krachel,
there's a link in every single podcast episode.
Every single episode has a link. So at any time. And just know that if it just occurs to you to you have a question and you don't want to go find that link, email us.
contact@clarityonfire.com.
Or send
Super
send us an Instagram message. Doesn't really matter how you reach us. Send us a carrier pigeon. I'll figure out what to do with that. Do people still do that? I bet they do.
I'm sure that's
it's like a
whole
hobby.
subculture.
Yeah, it must be like a hobby. Oh my God. I bet you the online forums are lit about carrier pigeons. What's wrong with me? I can't talk today. It's the second time I've done that. I don't think I'm dyslexic. Okay, so we will see you on Tuesday, I believe, with a retro blog from Kristen.
Yes. And then in the meantime, don't forget to go join our people-pleasing VIP list.
Yes. We'll be in touch pretty soon, within the next few weeks, with more details about that, like dates and what you can expect. But just know that we're going to have a nice, wholesome, fun, and challenging experience about getting over people-pleasing come later in August and into September.
All right. We'll see you again on Tuesday.
Bye.